Good morning, church family. How are we this morning? Good, that's good. I'm so glad that we can be here together, and I'm so glad for those who are joining us online, and I'm excited about what God has to say to us today. And I'm just going to give a little bit of a disclaimer that this morning I think I'm actually preaching to myself. So I think that God had something that he wanted to say to me, and I really hope and pray that maybe this is something that might mean something for you at this Christmas time. And so today I actually wanted to begin by telling you a story. So in our household, Tuesdays are not called Tuesdays, right? Tuesdays, we never refer them to as Tuesdays, because in our household, Tuesdays is named Nana's Day. Okay, so the reason why it's named Nana's Day is because Nana comes to mind our three kids, Jonah, Kaylin and Izzy, while mum and dad go off to work. And now our kids love Nana's Day because they have lots of fun things on Nana's Day. So Nana's Day, Nana brings all her arts and crafts. She brings all of her board games. She brings lots, and when I say lots, I really mean lots of special treats. There's also TV time and iPad time. But my kids love Nana's Day most of all because they get to spend time with their Nana. But this particular Tuesday gone by, Mark's a school teacher, so he's off work. And so I said to my mother-in-law, you know what, if you have things you need to get done, then that's okay, you do them, because Mark's got the kids. And so this Monday night, as I tucked Jonah into bed, I thought I better give the pre-warning, otherwise, they're going to be disappointed with Dad tomorrow. And I tucked Jonah into bed and I said, by the way, Nana's not coming tomorrow. And I could see sort of the disappointment come onto his face. And I said, but she's busy buying some presents for some people, thinking that, this would bring a big smile to his face. But Jonah actually said back to me, surprised me, and he said, you know what, Mum, I don't want a Christmas present from Nana. I just want her to come and spend the day with me, which I thought was so sweet. And it actually reminds me of a story in the Bible. And I want to read this story to you this morning. And so up on the screen, you can read along with me. It comes from the book of Luke, chapters 10, verses 38 to 42. It says, as they continued their travel, Jesus entered a village. A woman by the name of Martha welcomed him and made him feel quite at home. She had a sister, Mary, who sat before the master, hanging on every word he said. But Martha was pulled away by all she had to do in the kitchen. Later, she stepped in and interrupting them. Master, don't you care that my sister... Martha, don't you care that my sister has abandoned the kitchen to me? Tell her to lend me a hand. The master said, Martha, dear Martha, you are fussing far too much and getting yourself worked up over nothing. Only one thing is essential, and Mary has chosen it. It's the main course, and it won't be taken away from her. See, if I could sum up this passage into one sentence, I would sum it up by saying this: that our presence is more valuable than our service. Right? Our presence is more valuable than our service. And I think this statement was so true in this story that we just read about Jesus and the two sisters. But I think today that this statement still has great meaning. And perhaps right now, in the middle of the Christmas season, as Rosemary described to us this morning in communion, the busyness that we can come, the rush that we can come, our desire to want to serve our family and our friends, that this statement has some truth for us today. And so as you go about your Christmas preparations, I know for me it's sort of been slowly ramping up, and right now we're really in the heat of it, the mix of it. And so as you go about your Christmas preparations, I have a question for you. Are you more like Mary, or are you more like Martha? Are you more like Mary, who takes the time, who has the priority to be present with people, to be present with Jesus and those around her? Or are you more like Martha, getting pulled away by the things that you have to do? And I want to reread this story. So I'm going to go back a few slides. I want to reread this story. And as I reread it, I want you to think about it in two ways. I want you to think about it, well, how do you relate to Jesus? Because in a way, Jesus is a guest in our heart. Right? Jesus is a gentleman and he's not going to barge our way into our heart. And so what we actually do is we need to host Jesus into our heart. But at Christmas time, we are also a host of the people around us. On Christmas Day, as a church, we are actually going to host people into our church on Christmas Day who are going to be needing our presence much more than our service. And so let's reread the story. So as they continued in their travel, Jesus entered a village. A woman by the name of Martha welcomed him and made him feel quite at home. Okay, and here's our first moment of comparison. So she had a sister Mary who sat before the master, hanging on every word he said. When you're in a conversation with God or with people, do you hang on every word they say? Or are you more like Martha? But Martha was pulled away by all she had to do in the kitchen. Are you more like Martha and do you hang on every word? More like Mary who hangs on every word? Or are you more like Martha and you find yourself physically or emotionally being pulled away by all that you have to get done? Let's read on. Later she stepped in, interrupting them. Master, don't you care that my sister has abandoned the kitchen to me? Tell her to lend me a hand. The master said, Martha, Martha, dear Martha. And here's another point of comparison. You are fussing far too much and getting yourself worked up over nothing. That makes sense to me. Are you like Martha? Are you fussing? Are you getting yourself worked up over nothing? Or are you like Mary, who's chosen the one thing, the essential thing, and Mary has chosen it. It's the main course and it won't be taken away from her. You see, in this passage, Jesus isn't saying that hospitality isn't important. Because hospitality back then, just like it is now, is so important and it's part of the culture. But what Jesus is trying to say here is that when we are hosting someone, when we are being hospitable, the most important thing is our attention to our guest. It's okay to serve them, but it shouldn't be our priority. And so if there's one statement you can remember from today, it's this. And it's a bit cliche, so I apologize for it. But that our presence, our presence is our greatest present, right? Our presence is our greatest present. And before we head into a time of application, there's a couple of questions that I want to look at. And the first is, well, what does presence actually mean? What does it mean to offer my presence? And this is the definition. It's the state or fact of existing, occurring, or being presence. You see, presence isn't a doing word, it's a being word. And so when we are present with someone, it's not actually about physically doing something or getting something done, but it's that ability to simply to be with others, to be with God, to focus on the one essential thing, to host our guest. And the other question that maybe you might have is going, okay, that's a great idea. I would love to gift the gift of presents this Christmas. But then you're thinking, well, that's actually really hard to wrap up and put under the Christmas tree, right? How do I actually give this gift of my presence? And I think that we can actually look to the example of Jesus. Because Jesus can give us some tips into how we can wrap this gift up. And so today I have some 3 application points that I'm going to talk with you about. Okay, and in a way, there's going to be like lots of things that you might think, oh, I want to do that. But what I want to encourage you, and I've given you a cheat sheet. It's sitting on your seat. And if you would like it, if you're at home, I will email it out to our church. But if you're not a part of our church mailing list, please email us at info@cc.org.au. And so what my encouragement is, as I'm speaking, don't let the overwhelmingness of all become nothing, okay? So maybe choose one box to focus on as you lead up into Christmas time. Okay, does that sound all right? Yeah? Okay, all right. So the first application of how do we wrap this present up? How do we actually gift this presence of our presence, right? And this present can be our gift back to God to say thank you for what you've done at Christmas time. And it can also be to those people that are around us. And the first thing is to be humble. You see, it's really hard to be present with someone if we think that we are better than them or more important than what they are. Okay, so it's really hard to be present with someone if either we think we are better or we are more important than what they are. And, you know, this is a pretty strong statement. I don't know if I would walk around saying that I'm better or more important than other people. But if we're honest and if we have some self-reflection, that maybe there are times where we do. And so here's a little bit of a test, okay? So if you are thinking that your life is more important, that you might be better, you might catch yourself doing this. When someone else is speaking to you, okay, whether you're sitting down to hear from God or whether you're in a situation with people, if when the other person is speaking, if you're thinking about you or how this impacts you, you're actually saying the priority is me, when my attention should be on my guest. But I don't know about you, but I know that I catch myself out in my head thinking about me when I'm trying to give the attention to somebody else. And I do this in my relationship with God. You know, I forget that God is God and I am me. And while I'm sitting there trying to spend time with God, I can spend all the time talking and not much time in silence and listening and being attentive. But I want to read from you a Bible passage that speaks about humility. And it's from Philippians 2, verses 3-8. It says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used in his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant. Being made in human likeness and found in the appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." You see, at Christmas time, we remember that God humbled himself by coming to earth. You see, if God couldn't humble himself to become a man, he actually couldn't have been present with us. Right? If God hadn't humbled himself and became a man, he couldn't truly be present with us. And so being humble is almost like step one in being able to be present with someone. And you know, a sign of humility is when we can just sit and we can be and we can find a silence, not just a physical silence in our mouth, but also a silence of our inner conversation and of our heart judgments. And so one of the first application activities or tasks that I want to present to you today is like a silence training. Okay, and this silence training can take part on your own, because it's a little bit like if we give a sporting example, okay, think of a sport that you love, and if you don't, just pretend you like sport. All right, but if you have a set move in sport, the first time you do that set move, you don't do it in a game, right? If you do it in a game, it's going to fail hopelessly, okay, because you haven't practiced it, you haven't rehearsed it. So if you're in sport, what you actually do is in your training session, you practice that set move. So that way you have more success of achieving it in game time. And so this silence training, it's actually something that you can do alone with God. And hoping that as you practice this act of silence, this spiritual discipline, That when you're with other people, it might help you to be silent, and not just silent, not just a physical silence, but that silence of your heart, that silence of that inner conversation in your mouth. Okay? Sorry, that didn't make sense. That's that inner conversation in your head. All right? And so this is what you can do for the breathing activity. All right? So this is sort of a breathing activity that through, therapy and stuff, they've used it, and it can help you to find that silence and that peace. So what you do is you breathe in for 5 seconds. So let's do that together. So breathe in for 5 seconds. And then breathe out for 5 seconds. And then you hold, and then you repeat. Okay? And if you're anything like me, being silent is really hard. I did this morning, and, I think I got 2 or 3 breaths going. So another little tip, and this is on your cheat sheet, that what it can do is you can actually use your senses. Your senses around you to take in what's going on around you to help silence yourself. So you can breathe in and think, well, what do I see? And as you breathe out, take note of what you are seeing. And as you breathe in, you can think, well, what do I hear? And as you breathe out, take note of what you hear. And you can go on through those senses. And what this will actually do is will increase your capacity to be present. And you might want to just start this by just with you and God. Because if you can be present with anybody, God would be the best person to be present with. And then as you increase this skill and this capacity, when you're with others, the hope is that you will find that you can pay more attention to them, that you will be humbling yourself and keeping the focus on them. All right, so my next application point is to make Jesus your goal and not your task. Okay? Make Jesus your goal and not your task. I'm not sure about you, but something that draws my focus and attention a lot of days is my to-do list. The things that I have to get done. And at Christmas time, that to-do list might be a little bit longer than what it normally is, or a little bit more imminent than what it normally is. But if we go back to the story of Mary and Martha, we can see that Mary and Martha both had a goal that day. They both had a goal, but Martha's goal was to get things done. Where Mary's goal was about being present with Jesus and sitting with him. You see, I don't think that Mary was going to spend the whole day sitting at Jesus' feet, or that whole week just sitting there and being present with him. And I don't think that's necessarily what Jesus is saying, that he doesn't want us to serve, he just wants us to be with him. But I think the difference between Mary and Martha was their priorities. It was their priorities. It was what was their goals. You see, Martha, Jesus wasn't necessarily her goal. But we can see that for Mary, that Jesus was her goal and not her task. And another person in the Bible that had their goal as Jesus was Paul. Paul, a man who got lots of things done. If we think of someone that achieved a lot for the kingdom, we think of Paul as a great example. Yet when we hear from Paul, getting things done wasn't his goal. This is what he says in Philippians 3, verses 12 to 14. I'm not saying that I have this all together, that I have made it, but I am well on my way, reaching out for Christ, who has so wondrously reached out for me. Friends, don't get me wrong. By no means do I count myself an expert in all of this, but I've got my eye on the goal, where God is beckoning us onwards to Jesus. I'm off and running, and I'm not turning back. So how can we be more like Mary? How can we be more like Paul? Well, Jesus can be our goal and not our to-do list. And this is something that I've spoken about you before. So this might be something that you might be already doing in your life. But if you find that yourself, that you are a task-orientated person, that to-do list pulls you away like Martha, this is something that you can try and do each day. When you begin your productive day, all right, so maybe it's when you get into work, or maybe it's as you finish breakfast and you start to clean up the house, Or maybe it's before you begin your exercise. When you reach that productive part of your day, you can actually write down your to-do list. Write down your to-do list and maybe even your worry list, because sometimes our worries pull us away as well and we think, I've got to fix that. I've got to do something about that. So you can write your list, but then what you can do is you can hand that back to Jesus. The Bible tells us to shape our worries into prayers. And ask God for wisdom and discernment. Say, you know what, Jesus, this is what's laying on my heart today. But you know what? You are my goal. You are my focus. So you let me know, where do I need to start? And you see, when we make Jesus our goal, it actually gives us this freedom to be present with people. You see, when our tasks are our goal, what we'll find, and I find this, whether it's in a quiet time with God or whether I'm in a conversation with my kids or my friends, if my tasks are my goal, then what I'll do is I'll find myself drifting off to my to-do list. You know, I'll be trying to be present here, but my to-do list will pull me away. But what if we offered this to God each and every morning? If we said, you know what, this is what's on my heart, God, and I'm human, and I need your help to keep you at the center and at the focus of my heart, because I want to be present. I want to be present with people because I understand that while my service is helpful, my presence is a lot more powerful. And our third application point for today is to don't hold back when you share. Don't hold back when you share. You see, at times with God and times with others, sometimes we can't truly be present because we're holding back. We're holding something back for ourselves and we're struggling to share. And sharing is a lesson that, you know, a lot of us have learnt when we were little kids. I know at Life Group a few weeks ago, we haven't had Life Group for most of the year because of COVID. And our group, because we have mums and dads and kids, it's quite a large group. So we've only just started being able to meet together again. And Life Group is at our house. But what happened is this first Life Group came back. I found Izzy in her room with a bunch of her little friends. And Izzy was freaking out. Okay? Because she had forgotten how to share. All right? And she's going, no, like you can't, you know those little plastic scissors that cut paper that, you know, are safe? She's going, oh, you can't play with that. That's too dangerous. No, like I can't share with you. I would if I could, but it's dangerous, so I can't share that with you. You know, and then there's a doll that was on her bed, is on the floor. No, you can't do that. That doll belongs on the bed, not on the floor. And, you know, in my head, I'm laughing because Izzy trashes this room each and every day. So her concern isn't with you know, protecting her things. It's just that she simply didn't want to share the things that were precious to her. And so I took a moment to have a chat with Izzy and say, you know what, darling, our friends are here. Let's share with them. And when they leave, we'll put everything away and things will go back to normal. But, you know, we can be like kids sometimes. And we don't want to share our precious things. And I'm not sure what's precious to you. Maybe your time is precious to you. Maybe being vulnerable is precious to you. Or maybe just like Izzy, your possessions are precious to you. But you see, if we look at the Bible, there's another way. God doesn't want us to hold back. This is what Ephesians 5 verses 1-2 says. It says, watch what God does and then you do it. Like children who learn proper behavior from their parents, mostly what God does is love you. Keep company with him and learn a life of love. Observe how Christ loved us. He was not cautious, but extravagant. He didn't love in order to get something from us, but to give everything of himself. Love like that. You see, at Christmas time, we remember a God who showed extravagant love. When he took the time, when he made the plan to send his son down to earth, God did not hold back. He was willing to share his precious son with us. And we know that God is God and he is great. And we might think, well, you know what? Sometimes it's hard for me to share. Because in my human flesh, I want to hold back. I want to be like a toddler and have things to myself. So how do I do this? How do I share? And one way that we can learn to share is by giving all that we have back to God. And you see, when we entrust what we have back to God, do you know what he's going to do? He's going to share it. He's going to share it on our behalf. But we can know that whatever we have, we can trust to give back to God because he gave it first to us. And so the last application point that I want to talk to you about today is called the daily examine. And you see, what the daily examine does is it helps us to share our heart with God, to hand our day back to him so that we can give more freely tomorrow. You see, if we give our day to God each and every day, I really believe then that we will be able to give more freely, to not be able to have to hold back. Because once we've given it to God, he will help us give freely tomorrow. And so the daily examine is made up of 5 steps. And I'm not going to go through this in too much depth, but it is written down on your cheat sheet that you can reflect to throughout the week, okay? And so the daily examine can be done at the end of your day. All right, we started with, a moment of silence, which could be done at the beginning of your day, or it can be done throughout your day. This to-do and worry list, that becomes at the start of your productive day. But this daily examine is something that you might do as you head to bed, or it might be something that you do after dinner time. And it takes up 5 steps. So the first step is thanksgiving, where you take time to give thanks to God. And then petition, ask God to speak to you. And then a time where you review your day. And there's some reflection questions there to help you assist as you review your day. And then a response of giving your day back to God. And then looking ahead so that I can give more freely tomorrow. Now, I know we've talked about a lot today, so I just want to review a couple of points. Today we have said that our presence is greater than our service, right? Our presence is greater than our service. And we can choose to be like Mary or Martha, and we can hang on to every word when we are with other people, or we can be like Martha and get pulled away. We can be like Martha and get consumed by the many tasks, and we can fuss and we can worry. Or we can be like Mary, who's content with the one essential thing, hosting our guest. And we can be present with people by showing humility, by making our goal Jesus and not our tasks, and by not holding back. And so as we wrap up, I want you to have a think about, where are you? And in your cheat sheet, you have 4 boxes. And like I said, I want to encourage you to focus on one of these boxes. And so if this is a new concept for you, if you're thinking, you know what, Rachel, I don't think you've made your argument well enough, and I'm not sure about this whole presence and service thing, okay? I want to encourage you to look at that first box, and it has the passage of Mary and Martha. And I just want to encourage you that as you lead into Christmas, to read through that passage each day and ask God to speak to you, to challenge your heart about what is he saying here about hospitality. Or maybe being humble. Maybe something about that really struck you and you thought, I want to work on my humility. And so leading up to Christmas every day, you might do your silence training. Or maybe you might think, man, my to-do list, my worry list is so long at the moment, and it has such a pull on my life. And so maybe you want to begin your productive day by writing out this list and handing it back to God. Or maybe you might notice there's a tendency to hold back, to not want to share with people, to not want to share your heart with God. And so you might want to say, well, you know what, leading up to Christmas, I'm going to spend some time at the end of my day doing the daily examine. And I'm just going to go into a prayer time. But what I just want to say before we end is that, one of the most important guests that we can have in our heart is Jesus. And I'm not sure if you've invited Jesus into your heart. But like I said before, Jesus is a gentleman and he's not going to barge his way in. We actually need to host Jesus into our heart, to come humble before him, to be present with him. And so if you have never invited Jesus into your heart, I want to encourage you to come and speak to myself or speak to Ryan or speak to someone who is in this building. Because Jesus wants to come and live in your heart. And when you will find that when you are able to be present with Jesus, he will fill you with this such sense of peace that he will help you to be present with others in your life. And so I hope and pray that as you consider how you can be more hospitable at this Christmas season, how you can be more hospitable to Jesus and to those around you, I pray that God will ask you and encourage you to try one of these things this week. So just pray with me now. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for this Christmas season. Dear Lord, and what an opportunity Christmas is to speak about you. Because after all, it is Jesus' birthday. It is your birthday, Jesus. And so at this Christmas time, Lord, I pray that you help us as a church to show humility, to have you as our goal, and help us to love extravagantly and not hold back. And dear Jesus, I pray that if there is anyone here that hasn't invited you into their hearts, hasn't had the opportunity to host you into their hearts, Lord, I just ask that you will prompt them, that you will knock on their heart and they'll be able to open the door for you. And Lord, I pray for the rest of us that as we go into the Christmas season, that you will give us one thing to do to help us to be present, to most importantly be present with you, because Jesus, you are amazing. And you are the giver of all. And so, Lord, I pray that as a church that we will grow in being able to be present with you. That service won't be our priority, but being present with you will be our priority. And Lord, I pray that as we encounter people in our lives, Lord, that you prompt us to be present with them. And Lord, I pray that on on Christmas morning, as we host a breakfast, dear Lord, as a church, help us to make our presence be our priority. Yes, we will serve breakfast, but Lord, give us the wisdom and discernment to be able to be present with people and give it the greatest gift so that they might be able to know more about you and the extravagant love that you have for them. Lord, we just pray for all of these things in your Son's name. Amen.